great again.
RPN is not responsible for the views, actions, statements, or opinions of its guests, advertisers, or even its viewers. The information contained in this program is not to be confused with medical or legal advice. An appearance on this platform is not necessarily an endorsement, but as always, we encourage you to do your own research. Enjoy the show. So here is what your financial advisor is probably not going to tell you. By the time the news says to buy gold, it's already too late. You're waiting. I get it. Everybody's waiting to see if the ceasefire holds, waiting to see if the strait reopens, waiting to see just kind of what happens next. But the thing about it is, gold is not waiting for you because gold moves on fear, on instability, on the unknown. And it moves a lot faster than you can react. So while you're waiting for certainty, the rest of the world is planning for what comes next. So you can wait or you can prepare, but you can't do both. And remember, the best time to put on a seatbelt is before the accident happens, not after. So if you're finally ready to act, then it's time to reach out to Noble Gold Investments. They help Americans just like you protect their savings with physical gold and silver. It can get shipped right to your door, or they can hold it in a tax-advantaged IRA. No taxes, no penalties, no rollover fees on 401ks or an existing IRA. So visit noblegoldinvestments.com/redpill78 and get your free investor kit today. 5 minutes today could protect decades of savings. Once again, noblegoldinvestments.com/redpill78. Don't be the one still waiting. And when you support my sponsors, you support this channel. All right. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you very much, everyone, for joining us today. We have some late breaking news, something that quite literally just came across the wire mere moments ago. And I'm not even going to play around. We're not going to bury the lead. We're going to get right into it. Our gal in Colorado, Tina Peters, has just finally reached an agreement with the government of Colorado and Governor Jared Polis. Jared Polis is cutting her prison sentence in half and will be releasing her on parole on June 1st. So it appears that on June 1st, the day that Tina Peters is released, we will be taking down the Tina Peters Prison Watch PNG on my screen. So Colorado's Governor Jared Polis earlier today took the sentence of Mesa County Clerk Tina Peters. It was originally a 9-year sentence, if you remember, and he ordered that she be paroled on June 1st. Now, the sentence that Tina Peters received, they claim it was for orchestrating a security breach, but if you have been following this case, then you understand this was really about political persecution, someone daring to stand in the breach. They never went after Tina Peters for anything related to the election. It was a setup. As far as I'm concerned, the person whose security credentials were used, or the person who used the security credentials that Tina Peters gave them to gain access to the material that she could then save, because it was, of course, federally and state mandated. I believe that it's highly likely that person may have been a plant in Tina Peters' orbit. So now Tina Peters will, of course, be released. Now, of course, Jared Polis wants everyone to know that he is not pardoning her. He said, I publicly have said very early on I would not even consider a pardon. And so as such, Tina, unfortunately, remains a convicted felon. He says that she deserves to be a convicted felon. But he said because of her incorrect and unpopular speech, she did receive an unduly harsh sentence. Now, there is some good and some bad that comes along with this. Unfortunately, because Tina is going to remain a felon, she will, of course, not have her criminal record erased. She will most likely not be able to vote in future elections. I would imagine they're probably not going to allow her to own firearms either. But, you know, I mean, we got to choose our battles at this point, and I'm just glad that we're getting Tina out, and she's going to be able to go live some semblance of a normal life. Now, although the announcement today is certainly unexpected, it's not something that we didn't foresee coming. It was not that long ago that Jared Polis had mentioned, since, of course, this is the final year of his term as Colorado governor, he was going to begin reviewing certain cases to see if they might qualify for clemency or for early parole. And, of course, there was another case very similar to Tina's where a public servant definitely committed a series of crimes, actually were charged with the exact same crime they ended up convicting Tina of, and that person received no prison sentence at all. And, of course, the judge was not a total cocksucker to her when he read her sentence. So, and pardon my language, but that was, of course, difficult to endure. I'm sure it was not easy for Tina as well. She's gone through a lot. She deserves to get her life back. And I guess, you know, at the end of the day, I am going to tip my hat to Jared Polis for doing something close to the right thing. Now, this is also in spite of the people closest to Jared Polis telling him that he should not touch Tina Peters. He should allow her to rot in prison, and that if he allows her out, then, of course, that's going to damage his political career in the future. I think that Jared Polis might be attempting to run for president in the near future, but I don't know how successful that run would be with or without the release of Tina Peters. Jared also said, I view my job as governor as one where I always try to do what's right. Ultimately, I believe people like me because I try to do what's right. I try to do what's right regardless of whether it's popular and regardless of the politics of it. And, of course, he likes to do what's right. Now, by waiting until 2 days after Colorado's 2026 lawmaking term had ended to announce this clemency decision, Polis has avoided damage to his legislative agenda, meaning that if he had things that he wanted changed or passed in the Colorado state legislature, nobody was going to say no because they had no idea that he was going to do this. Everything is politics with these people. Anyways, just wanted to make sure everybody was aware that Tina is getting out, and it's great news. Today is the 15th, so in approximately 2 weeks, Tina will be free once again. And I just hope that people who were involved in what happened to her are willing to do the right thing. I hope that there's going to be somebody there to help pick her up and help her start her new life, because this woman quite literally lost everything. Absolutely horrible. All right. Now, we have some important events coming up this week, which include at least one hotly contested primary election. But before we do that, I do have a very brief message from another sponsor of the program over here on Rumble and our friends over at MCG Tech. All right, you guys, got something pretty awesome for you. Actually, we got to make that too, because these aren't just add-ons or nice-to-haves. These are actually the kind of gear that you don't think about until the moment you really wish you had them. First of all, you're going to get a tourniquet. It's not the kind that you see sitting on a shelf collecting dust. This is the same style of tourniquet that's issued to Marines operating in the field. It's the kind of tool that is there for one reason: when things go sideways and there's no time to hesitate. And on top of that, they're also going to throw in a Tonto trail knife at no extra cost. This is built for hard use, not for display cases. So if you're ready to grab these items and get them to make them yours, you can just scan the QR code on screen, or you can go directly to mcgtac.com/redclamp. Now, this is about being a little more prepared than you were yesterday, just a little more capable when it counts. And this is the deal. It's for my audience only, so don't sit on it because they are going to sell out. Grab this clamp and your free knife while they're still available, because if you've got people that you care about, it might make sense to go ahead and grab a couple extra while you're at it. Offers like this do not hang around for long. If you want it, don't wait until it's gone. So don't wait and head on over to mcgtac.com/redclamp, or you can use that QR code that you see on screen. Thank you very much to them, and thank you very much to Rumble. Do appreciate y'all. All right, so what am I talking about with this hotly contested primary election? We got to head on down to Louisiana. President Trump is calling on all patriots to vote in the election. Will be held on Saturday, kind of a non-standard day. Maybe that's how they do it down in Louisiana. Maybe it has something to do with the date prescribed by Louisiana law. I'm not exactly certain, but Bill Cassidy, who is, of course, a Rhino senator, he is looking to be unseated. Well, President Trump is looking to unseat him. So President Trump is asking all Louisiana patriots to vote out the establishment incumbent during this weekend's high-stakes GOP primary. And President Trump has already endorsed another candidate. This is Congresswoman Julia Laetrile instead. So today's the 15th. The primary is tomorrow. I don't know how many viewers from Louisiana we have in the chat, but if you do live there, please make sure that you vote. President Trump is intensifying this pressure campaign against Cassidy because he's done nothing but try to stand in the way of President Trump's agenda. Over on X, and I believe over on Truth Social, he wrote, highly respected American Congresswoman Julia Laetrile of the wonderful state of Louisiana is a great star and has been from the very beginning, and it only gets better. Julia is running for the United States Senate in Louisiana, a place I love, and won big 6 times, including primaries in 2016, 2020, and 2024. I know Julia well. We have seen her tested at the highest and most difficult levels, and she's a total winner. A proud mother of 2 children, Julia is a wonderful person. She's always delivered for Louisiana, and she would continue doing so in the United States Senate. As your next senator, Julia will work tirelessly to grow our economy, cut taxes and regulations, support our amazing farmers and fishermen, champion Louisiana oil and gas, unleash American energy dominance, promote Made in the USA, keep our borders secure, stop migrant crime, ensure law and order, strengthen our military veterans, and protect our always under siege Second Amendment. Election Day is tomorrow, Saturday, May 16th. Vote for Julia Laetrile. She has my complete and total endorsement, and she will not let you down. All right. Well, I know precious little about Julia Laetrile, but the things that I do know about Bill Cassidy, I don't care for the man. I don't care for him at all. So I will be happy to see Bill Cassidy go. I will be happy to see quite a few Rhino imposters voted out after this next election season. So hopefully that happens. All right, now let's go ahead and check in with our gal, Jeanine Pirro, the U.S. Attorney for the District of Columbia. She held a press conference earlier today, and she called something out that I think a lot of us have wondered about in many, many instances in the past. Every time you see a group of youths taking over a business or a park, or doing donuts in the middle of a public street during heavy traffic, or fighting in the middle of a mall, or stealing all of the products off of the shelves of a jewelry store or a handbag shop, you ask yourself, where the hell are their parents? Where in the hell are their parents? And do these kids go back home and say, look, Ma, I just stole this Gucci bag, or look, Ma, I just did donuts in the middle of I-10, or whatever it might be? Well, youths and teens. And let's be honest, most of these kids are thugs. They're not really youths. I think you've got some people who are younger. You've got some people who are obviously minors that are going to be easily corrupted, but you have a cultural problem which extends far beyond the age of 18. So in D.C., even though they have done a lot to address the crime, there has been a number of incidents in recent months where we're going to actually take a look at one, and Jeanine Pirro is going to tell us what she's changing in the District of Columbia to address these things. On the left, you will see one of these youth takeovers, and on the right, of course, is U.S. Attorney Jeanine Pirro.
Problem. There is one area that hasn't been discussed. Parental involvement has been a noted gap in any discussion. And I am here to say, as the United States Attorney in the District of Columbia, that ends today. Starting today, my office will aggressively prosecute parents under D.C.'s curfew law, and the specific statute that we will use is a violation of D.C. Code.
It's exactly the same setup that it was yesterday. Could you guys hear that on YouTube? Tell me that. Please tell me over on YouTube if you guys could hear the audio. Okay, so I know that you heard some squeaks. That's strange. Yes, man, there aren't just like texts that I can just reach out to. I mean, what we're dealing with here is a series of different types of softwares and operating systems. Let me try to reboot. Okay, so no audio from Jeanine Pirro. It's frozen because I pushed pause. Okay, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to back out of OBS, and I'm going to refresh my browser because the stream is going through the browser on Rumble Studio. So just sit tight, and I'll be right back. Okay. Okay, so I'm going to try this again. I know that there's no audio. Somebody tell people in the audience that I'm trying to fix this because nothing should have been any different. It was exactly the same setup as yesterday. I'm going to play the audio, and I need you guys to tell me if you can hear it.
22-811, and it involves contributing to the delinquency of a minor. This statute makes it unlawful for an adult to enable, facilitate, or
We rebooted the browser. We rebooted OBS. Now, please tell me on YouTube if you guys were getting an echo. Okay. Except now it's good. It was a software issue. That's it. No echo. Okay. Here we go.
permit a minor to engage.
I need to start it over.
And as we grapple with this problem, there is one area that hasn't been discussed. Parental involvement has been a noted gap in any discussion. And I am here to say, as the United States Attorney in the District of Columbia, that ends today. Starting today, my office will aggressively prosecute parents under D.C.'s curfew law, and the specific statute that we will use is a violation of D.C. Code 22-811, and it involves contributing to the delinquency of a minor. This statute makes it unlawful for an adult to enable, facilitate, or permit a minor to engage in delinquent acts. The penalty is up to 6 months imprisonment. So if the evidence shows the parent knew, or should have known, or permitted, or fail to prevent participation, we're going to charge them. And if you drop your kid off and you fail to supervise them, or you let them skip school to join the chaos, you are going to face fines, court-ordered classes, and possible jail time. Penalties can be imposed even if the juvenile minor is not prosecuted. So a parent commits this offense if they permit or by insufficient control allow a minor under the age of 18 to violate a curfew. Now, we're going to be asking the Metropolitan Police Department to issue parental citations whenever a minor's curfew violation is tied to a takeover. We will seek to pair these citations with mandatory parental notification and court-mandated parental classes or family counseling as a condition of the resolution of the case.
Such a good idea, and far, far too long it took for something like this to be done. There's no reason that parents should be allowing their children to run amok, especially in a place like Washington, D.C. I bet now you are probably going to have these kids, at least to a degree, you're going to see a reduction in it. You're going to see these kids no longer taking over the streets. And by virtue of the fact that they're at home, their parents are going to have to learn actually how to parent. And if they decide that they don't want to discipline their children, then, as Janine said, they could end up in jail. They could certainly end up with parenting classes. They could end up with fines. This is 100% what this city needs. And I would suggest it needs to be anywhere that you have problems like this. The only problem in terms of that is that not everybody is a Janine Pirro. But bravo, Janine. Bravo, Judge Janine. Principal Enigma says, brother, if you're using Apple equipment, I understand your frustration. So I am using Apple equipment, and I normally don't have any problems with Apple equipment. I didn't have any problems until I had to start using Rumble Studio. The problem, as far as I can tell, is that it's a web-based app. Okay, so it's going through a browser, and as such, there are changes that are being made to it. And I should probably just get into the habit of shutting down my browser and rebooting it. And then, of course, browsers are being updated all the time. All software is being updated all the time. And a lot of times when a piece of software is updated, it's going to cause a conflict with something else because I got probably 30 different types of software that are being used right now. I have a lot more problems with Windows than I do with Apple. I love Apple. I mean, it always usually just works properly, especially when I'm doing my work at home. All right, so let us continue here. Did you guys know that there was a terror attack that was thwarted just yesterday? A Somali man. Does that sound familiar? A Somali man from Melvindale, Michigan. His name was Amar Abdul Majid Mohammed Saeed. He hit like all of the beats on that. Now, he's been charged as of yesterday for allegedly plotting some type of an Islamic mass casualty event. He was looking to hit a military base in Warren, Michigan. And the other thing is that he was doing it on behalf of or in conjunction with ISIS, which, of course, is, if you know, that really is Barack Obama's Islamic State of Iran, Iraq, and Syria. Used to be ISIL, and then they decided that ISIL didn't have that catchy ring to it, and so they changed it to ISIS. What's also funny is that Siri on the iPhone was originally going to be called ISIS, and they had to change the name from ISIS to Siri because they came out with the CIA's newest terror organization, ISIS, during Barack Obama's presidency. Anyways, so Saeed was a former member of the Michigan Army National Guard. So that's how he would have some knowledge of this base. And it's possible he could have been successful and it could have resulted in a number of deaths. But as everybody knows, there's a large number of Somalis residing in the United States, and an even bigger group of them have been convicted over the years of committing acts of Islamic terrorism. And you add to that the overt acts of fraud, the negative impact they have on the locations where they emigrate to. So I would say that it's about high time that we stop allowing Somalis to come into the United States. The Somali community relies heavily on welfare and handouts, and, of course, the ignorance of Americans being told that immigrants and asylum seekers are victims of some, dastardly deeds back home. These people should not be living in the United States. That is my official take on Somalians. And I will say this, there are many different Somalian tribes, so to speak, at least a couple of them, and not all of them are like Mr. Saeed. Not all of them are like the scammers that we have in Ohio and Minnesota and Pennsylvania. There's definitely some good ones who are going to, add to our culture, who are going to assimilate into society. But that is all shit we should figure out before we just wholesale open the door and allow them to come on in. If people are going to come to the United States of America and they don't have gainful employment, if they don't have a stable living situation, if they're going to need to hold their hand out and say, I can't survive here in this foreign land unless you give me free shit, that is a wonderful reason to not let them in. I go back to what we talked about yesterday with the Assimilation Act that Tommy Tuberville and Andy Ogles have put together. We need to have strict vetting on these people. And even better, just no more immigrants. No more immigrants for a period of time. Moratorium on immigration until we get a firm grip on exactly who is here. Because I will tell you this, Mr. Amar Abdul Majid Mohammed Saeed is not the only person out there right now plotting to kill Americans. And I hope that they get this guy, hope they put him in prison for a good long time, and I hope that it leads to a larger network that we can track down, and then these people can be removed. All right. Now, I need to say thank you to Filter Dog. And you know what, Filter Dog, you may have just referred to the tweet that I just went over about a possible terror attack that was just thwarted. Let me see if that was the same thing I just talked about. No, it's a different one. Oh, gosh, I guess we should talk about this first. Okay, so the Trump FBI has just foiled a major terrorist plot that would have been carried out by an Iran-backed militia commander on U.S. soil. Plus, it would have involved Canada and Europe. This is another Mohammed, go figure, Mohammed al-Saidi. He's the leader of the Islamist Kataib Hezbollah, and he's got 20 or more attacks that were planned. He was looking to hit Jewish sites, big surprise, including one in New York. Okay, so let's take a listen to Acting Attorney General Todd Blanche. Looks like this guy is hanging out here with, who's the guy who died like a dog, you guys? Salami or whatever his name is. Anyone.
A remarkable effort by our FBI, Director Patel leadership, and our international partners. And we were able to intercept and get in the middle of this man's attempts to wreak havoc and terrorize not only the United States, Canada, Europe. And so we were able to introduce an undercover working with our law enforcement partners. So I think what our U.S. attorney just said is
Baghdadi, that's his name. Baghdadi died like a dog.
Dead on, that President Trump's leadership around the world allows us to have the credibility and the partnerships to allow us to work with folks overseas. And that's what happened here. So he was brought here and appeared in court earlier today. And it is on the one hand, should be very alarming to the people in this country that there are men around the world trying to exact this sort of terror. On the other hand, it shows the success of good law enforcement work and good police work and working hard to protect our borders, which is what we do every single day. And so this investigation is ongoing. It's just a complaint. I expect the next steps will be an indictment, and obviously we're still investigating and going to make sure that anybody that was involved with him will be brought to justice as well.
Was he picked up in Iraq, and when was he brought to the United States?
He was recently brought to the United States. I want to be careful talking about the operation so I don't put anybody in danger, but it's enough to say that this was an effort that included not only the FBI, but our law enforcement partners overseas as well.
Yeah.
All right. Artsy Jones says, hi, Zach and Lisa. God bless. Have a great weekend. Thank you, my friend. Risto73 says, explosive device found at a dam today in the U.S. So I know about an explosive device in Alabama that was found at a dam yesterday. Are you saying that, I don't know if that's what you're talking about, or if you're saying that there was another explosive device found at a dam today? Hold on just a second. Explosive device dam. Okay, so yeah, the first thing that comes up is the device in Mobile that we talked about yesterday. So I think that may be what you're talking. I was just 24 hours ahead of anybody else. That's the thing. Okay. All right. So yeah, I'm pretty sure. Yeah, everything that I'm seeing is related to this grenade type IED that was discovered at the dam in Mobile, Alabama. And dang, that's the dam. I didn't see that yesterday. So yeah, I think I was just, you know what? It's funny. A lot of times, like the work that I put in to try to find good stories to bring to you guys, like the next day I will go and like look through like all of the conservative news sources and like try to find something that I haven't already talked about. And like so much of the stuff, I'm like, I talked about that yesterday. So anyways, yeah, so it is the same thing, not another explosive device, which is good. But thank you, Risto. Appreciate you. Eleanor 2000, she says, a little gift from my state tax overpayment. Oh, love you. Thank you for that. Zach, have a wonderful weekend with sweet Lisa. Enjoy every afternoon here with you and the RPN gang. Thank you so much. I really do appreciate you. Thank you also to Mighty Patriot for the shades. Thank you to Jay for the cookie. Thank you to Filter Dog, who also says President Trump brought his own chef so he wouldn't have to eat the Chinese food and avoid poisoning. Yes, and they also wouldn't allow anybody who came with the U.S. delegation to bring back any of the gifts or trinkets that they received from the Chinese while they were there. I think it's pretty obvious that everybody knows that it would be a vector for spying. Moon Baby says, what up, family? And thanks for my nightly news. Thank you for that. Appreciate that. So, Zach, they blew that up in the water. What if it was a biological agent in their clap? So they didn't blow it up in the water. They took it out of the water, and then they blew it up at a site away from the dam. So it was in the woods or something like that. And I have to imagine that they would have considered the possibility of a different type of biological agent being included with that device. So they had the FBI there. They had a whole bunch of different specialized agencies that assisted in the recovery and then the dispersal of that device. So yeah, I wouldn't worry too much about that. I'm certain that they would have thought to themselves, gosh, is this maybe not something we should blow up? They definitely thought about that. All right. So, all right. So this is probably something that should surprise nobody. I was worried about this when they announced it, but the Senate parliamentarian, if you guys don't know, the Senate parliamentarian is like this assistant to the vice president and to the president of the Senate, which is like the speaker of the Senate. She is a nonpartisan, theoretically a nonpartisan position that the speaker of the Senate could at any time fire and replace. This woman came into this job during the Obama administration, and she is a leftist, okay? Make no mistake about it. She's the one who essentially checks these bills to make sure that they comport with the rules of the Senate. And when the House passed the funding for everything but ICE and Border Patrol, I was like, okay, so they're gonna do funding for DHS, of which ICE and Border Patrol are part, but they're not going to fund ICE and Border Patrol. They're going to do it separately. I thought it was a retarded idea at the time, and now it's obvious that it was a retarded idea because the language that was written for the reconciliation bill, which is a term that relates merely to funding issues. So you can't have anything in a reconciliation bill that has anything to do with anything other than the funding of the core mission as prescribed by Congress. I thought to myself, wow, you know, this might be an opportunity for them to stall the funding of ICE and Border Patrol. And so as of right now, ICE and Border Patrol are not funded, not fully in the long-term sense, because she has essentially rebuked several of the major sections of this reconciliation bill. So that 75-day shutdown was ended on the promise that this funding package was going to be passed. And it was a $72 billion package. So yesterday, staffers for both Democrats and Republicans met with the Senate parliamentarian Elizabeth McDonough to go through the resolution, the reconciliation package, and she made a couple of key notations, suggesting that the language does not comport with the rules of the Senate, and something called the Byrd Rule, which deals with why they're able to do this funding package on its own under the reconciliation, and it has to be within these super strict rules. So this is likely not going to be passed by June 1st. That was President Trump's deadline. The three provisions in this bill that she found supposedly run afoul of those strict rules I mentioned for budget reconciliation to work. Now, let's go ahead and take a look. This is what she noted. And if the Senate is unable to get their shit together and change the language to effectively be in line with these rules to meet the Byrd Rule, well, then it's not going to be something that passes. So, I'm sorry. Provisions subject to a 60-vote Byrd Rule, point of order. All right. Section of appropriations to the U.S. Customs and Border Protection, 13A5. These sections aim to fully replace bipartisan appropriations to CBP as drafted. The text inappropriately funds activities outside of the HSGAC's jurisdiction, meaning that apparently the language that they used seeks to divert funds for something else. Border security, technology, and screening. This subsection allows funds to be used for the initial screenings of unaccompanied alien children. As drafted, it undermines decades-old protections for non-citizen children in the Trafficking Victims Protection Reauthorization Act, as evidenced by Trump administration's implementation in the One Big Beautiful Bill. So ironically, it seems like they were trying to work in protections to ensure that we had identities for these children if they did come across. And of course, that's to stop human trafficking, stop child trafficking. And here she's saying that it is misaligned with a pre-existing bill that already addressed this. And then additional Department of Homeland Security appropriation, Section 4. This section provides another $2.5 billion in appropriations to the immigration provisions in the One Big Beautiful Bill's HSGAC title. The provision undermines the Flores Settlement Agreement and the Trafficking Victims Protection Reauthorization Act, decades-old legal protections for non-citizen children screened, processed, and detained by the United States, as evidenced by the Trump administration's implementation of the One Big Beautiful Bill Act. Also, the One Big Beautiful Bill has been used to circumvent the appropriations process and fund agencies outside of the HSGAC's jurisdiction. The parliamentarians' advice is based on whether a provision is appropriate for reconciliation and conforms to the limitations of the Byrd Rule. It is not a judgment on the relative merits of a particular policy. Now, I don't have these particular sections in front of me, so I really can't comment any further as to whether or not she's correct. But she does tend to be a bit of a stickler. And I don't know if certain language was inserted into the bill to perhaps ensure that this process would happen. What I can tell you is that at any time, John Thune or whomever is leading the Senate could fire this woman and then appoint somebody else to operate in her place. That's probably not going to happen. I don't see that happening at any time. Certainly, I don't see anything approaching leadership coming from John Thune. Now, I am sorry to do this to you, but I am going to play a clip from Kamala Harris. And I do this in connection with the story where I just mentioned John Thune's name, because John Thune is not the guy to give us the change that we need. John Thune is not the guy to do the right thing. John Thune is not the guy to support the Making America Great Again agenda. And the reason that's a problem is because if we continue to do business as usual, as soon as the Dems and the deep state regain total control over the government, if they get a hold of Congress, well, they've already told us a lot of what they're going to do. If you look at James Carville's statements from recent months, he's been very clear. He is pissed as a mad dog in heat about the changes that President Trump has been making and the way things are going for the Democrat Party. And he has stated that they need to pack the Supreme Court. Kamala Harris just did this interview, and she also has admitted that one of the first things they're going to do is add 4 seats to the Supreme Court. They're immediately going to go for statehood for Puerto Rico and for Washington, D.C. And we can make sure those things don't happen if we get rid of the filibuster.
It's a pretty radical new playbook in the wake of big redistricting losses. Take a listen.
Let's engage in a good old-fashioned roundtable where we agree there are no bad ideas. For example, Supreme Court reform, including the notion of expanding the court. Let's invite a discussion about how do we, and if so, how do we push for statehood for Puerto Rico and D.C.? How are we thinking about the Electoral College? But, you know, frankly, we've got to neutralize this red state cheating.
This is so rich. This is so rich because you look at states that have been controlled by Democrats for decades upon decades, and they have gerrymandered the shit out of those places. And the redistricting that's being done in red states, it's not gerrymandering. In fact, they're undoing gerrymandering. They're undoing unconstitutional districts, which have been based upon a concept of race, which is illegal. It's unconstitutional. They have the duty to do this, and they're just upset. They're upset that they're losing. They're upset that people are finally seeing through the lies and seeing through the bullshit. And more importantly, that their plan to hold power for eternity has fallen apart by President Trump coming back once again.
And it's going to include and have to include, again, in terms of the ideas and what we're willing to do to say, and so blue states, figure out how you're going to expand the map.
Let's bring in Senator Shelley Moore Caput.
So when you look at a state like Illinois, okay, you look at a state like these places up in the Northeast, where you've got at least 40% of the population that are Republicans and virtually no Republican representation. Illinois, their districts are a mangled mess. It's a Frankensteinian idea of what a congressional map looks like. So my message here is that these people have no care or morals or ethics. They will do whatever is necessary for them. And so the redistricting that we see happening, I'm glad about it. Now, Brian Kemp has called for the redrawing of Georgia's congressional map, but the sticking point is that it's not going to hit until 2028. So it will have no effect on the election, on the midterms right here. So this is going to be done, as it has been in other states, through a special legislative session. The State House and the State Senate maps are going to be redrawn, and Governor Kemp announced this on Wednesday. This has to begin on June 17th, and this is likely going to give Republicans 2 more U.S. House seats, and it's going to flip the current 9R 5D delegation into a 11R 3D delegation. But why not have it take effect right now? I mean, why wait until 2028? That means that you're forcing the people of Georgia to live for 2 years under an unconstitutional gerrymandered map. So, I mean, I think that Brian Kemp doesn't want to give any win to Donald Trump. He knows he has to do it, but he doesn't want to do it right now. Take effect in 2028, maybe it won't matter by then, because for him, the deep state may have won. Now, South Carolina, who initially had said he wasn't going to plan for a special session, Governor Henry McMaster has now said, actually, that is what we're going to go ahead and do. So Henry McMaster has issued this executive order forcing the assembly back into an extra legislative session so that they can tackle not only the state budget, but also the issue of the redistricting. So this special session began today at 11 a.m. And McMaster had said, I have issued an executive order calling the General Assembly back for an extra legislative session to address budgeting and the congressional districts. So that is good. However, Governor of Mississippi, Tate Reeves, has just called off their planned special session. He had already requested that the House and the Senate come back. And he says that, well, they could still revisit their congressional maps, but just not right now. We're just not going to do it right now. I'm so pissed about this because, like, we just had the announcement that they were going to be doing this. He announced on Wednesday, I guess, that he's going to be canceling the special session that is scheduled to begin next week. Their meetings would have been to address the Supreme Court decision and the Mississippi redistricting. It would also address Mississippi Supreme Court districts. Now, a number of lawmakers have suggested that Mississippi could add a congressional district for Republicans as part of their broader effort to bring about some sort of balance in the force, if you will. But Reeves said this cancellation came after the U.S. Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals had vacated a prior ruling requiring Mississippi to redraw its state Supreme Court district. So the lower court had previously found the districts violated the Federal Voting Rights Act, which diluted black voting power. Now he says, well, we don't have to do it, so of course we're just not going to do it. But President Trump wants him to do it. It is possible for them to pick up another seat. But Reeves says that redrawing the congressional maps before the midterms would be difficult to complete in time during an interview with a talk show on Wednesday morning. He also warned that forcing a new congressional map could risk hurting Republicans in Mississippi elections. I feel like everybody wants this to happen. Let's just go ahead and do it. I don't think it's not going to hurt anybody. You're still going to have Republicans that take these seats. But he said it's complicated. Every issue surrounding redistricting is complicated. And I think it's fair to say that we are looking at every potential option as to what that may look like and when the best time is to look at it. Now, this, of course, is also going to, again, if you force your constituents to live for several more years under an unconstitutional map, then what's the problem with just doing it right now? It seems like he's essentially saying that the people working in the state of Mississippi can't get the job done, which is strange because all of these other people are more than happy to get the job done. They can go ahead and do it. All right. Now, Tennessee, Steve Cohen has just announced today that he is canceling his reelection bid. Now that his district is being redrawn, his district doesn't exist anymore. So the fact that he was running for this seat that he had held for the last 20 years or so is now moot. So the redrawing of the Tennessee congressional districts has effectively put him out of a job. Let's see. I do actually want to show you his announcement. It's very morose, very sad, very sad. Steve Cohen drops out. And remember, Steve Cohen is the man who ate fried chicken during a congressional hearing. Here he is. All right. Congressman Cohen, tell me what you think.
So that's something special about Memphis, and we're not going to have that. And I feel bad for my constituents because a lot of them come up to me regularly and say, please, we're for you, and don't quit. Don't quit. I got to keep something recently today, African-American and Caucasian, don't quit. And I don't want to quit. I'm not a quitter. But these districts were drawn to beat me. They were drawn to defeat me. And I had an uncle a long time ago who told me many pithy statements. And he said, Steve, never put your head in a lion's mouth. And this is what I would be doing, to go out and I can't represent counties all the way to Williamson County that have nothing in common with Memphis. And Memphis is that's my Jones. It's Memphis, and I get things from Memphis. You can look around here, there's the baseball park, which I got the state funding to help make it happen. The Memphis State Tigers. The bridge over here, which is a bridge we got, that's a walking and bicycle bridge to across the Mississippi River, which I got the funding for that. That's my home, looking at it over the park from my house.
Let me just say, he's been there for 20 years, and he came up with two things. You would think that with an illustrious career as long as Representative Cohen, he would have more than a few other things he might very quickly be able to rattle off. I'm so proud of my accomplishments. Let me tell you all about them.
But Memphis is my home, and that's what I'll fight for, and I want to do it again. If I get the chance, I'll do it. But otherwise, I'll be retiring from Congress and from, I guess, from public life. Anybody have any questions, I'll be glad to answer.
No, we're good. We're good, Representative Cohen. But he said there he's retiring not only from Congress, but also from public life. So that seems to indicate to me that Steve Cohen doesn't think he should run for mayor or for governor of Tennessee. That district no longer exists. Good riddance to bad or rubbish. All right. Now, I told you not that long ago about a Republican lawmaker that was missing from Congress. He hadn't shown up. Shortly after that, the next day, I think he came forward and said, yeah, guys, I'm not feeling too well. I'm undergoing some treatments, and I'll be good. I'll be back. Now, he hasn't told us exactly what's going on. He didn't say if he had cancer. He didn't say if he was at rehab or anything like that, only that he had some necessary medical treatments that he needed to engage in. Now, we have another House of Representatives member, this time Democrat Representative Frederica Wilson. You remember her. She's that clown who wears the cowboy hat. Frederica Wilson has not voted on the House floor in nearly a month. She missed all 10 votes on Wednesday, and that means she's missed 43 consecutive votes. Also, somebody on her social media page, is posting old photos to those social media pages, as if she's not around anymore to be able to post those photos. Now, you can see here the picture that was posted by someone. She says, as students plan their futures, service through a service academy remains a powerful path to leadership, discipline, and opportunity. I was proud to host a service academy day at FIU, bringing together representatives to share guidance with their next generation. Now, she posted that, and it seems like she was there. Well, the only problem is that that event that she mentions was actually October 4th of last year. So kind of strange that she's not there. And it's also odd that she wouldn't say, hey, I'm not feeling too good. I'm just going to go ahead and take some time off. Representative Thomas Keene from New Jersey was the other one. Now, Thomas Keene's father has spoken up, and he said, my son's going to be okay, but he still hasn't said what he has. Anyways, Mike Johnson spoke to Thomas Keene. He said, I was happy to speak to Tom Keene Jr. this afternoon by phone. He's attending to a personal health matter, and he expects to be back to 100% very soon. His personal health matter almost sounds like he's in rehab to me. That's why I mentioned it. Because generally, if somebody has cancer or they have something like that, they tend to tell their constituents, because that's something that people might want to be made aware of. If I got to go away for 45 days and I don't want to tell anybody why it is, maybe he's got a problem with booze or something like that. I don't know. Allegedly, not even in my opinion, just throwing it out there. Anyways, Johnson also said, Tom is one of the most dedicated and hardest working members of Congress, and I'm grateful for all that he does and will continue to do to serve New Jerseyans and our country. Unfortunately, no one was available to say anything similar about Frederica Wilson. So I don't have any comments from the Democrats. Don't have a statement coming from Dollar Store Obama, Hakeem Jeffries, nothing like that. All we know is that Frederica Wilson is missing, and somebody is posting to her social media acting like she's doing events that were, many, many months ago. So I don't know. I guess maybe after today, people noticing, Frederica will step out of the shadows and let people know that she's okay, or that she isn't okay. I don't know. But let me say thank you very much to G. Fontez, who says, look at what she's had done to her nose so she can continue to consume cocaine or God only knows what into her nostrils. It's been changed not too long ago. Who exactly are we talking about? Who are we talking about doing cocaine? I don't know. Okay. All right. So I maybe this woman's doing cocaine. Who knows? We're going to talk about a woman running for Congress in Michigan. Her name is Shelby Campbell. And ever since Kat Abigazela lost her bid in her primary in Illinois, I felt a particular void inside me. I didn't have a female boss bitch on the left that I could troll and I could make fun of. But I'm telling you, Shelby Campbell seems like that kind of woman that I can go ahead and bring up as my next the next bullseye for my ire. So I guess that Shelby is running for the state's 13th district, and for some reason she went online and called herself a see you next Tuesday, a cunt. She called herself a cunt. She recently, I guess, created a firestorm after she posted a video mocking the Charlie Kirk assassination. Hold on. Let's just, in the interest of full disclosure, let's just take a look at this. All right. So Shelby N. Campbell, a Democrat running for Congress in Michigan, posted a video on TikTok laughing because Charlie Kirk is dead, bragging that Jimmy Kimmel got his show back. Wow.
Does it hurt?
She is a real piece of shit. Okay, so this was from September of last year.
Hey, MAGA, how bad does it hurt? The Jimmy Kimmel's back, but you guys can't get your person back. Hey, MAGA.
Oh, yeah, she's a despicable woman. Good evening. My name is Shelby Campbell, and I'm... My name is Shelby Campbell, and I'm running for the 13th Congressional District here in Wayne County, Michigan. I'm a true grassroots candidate, and I cannot wait to advocate for the people. Contributions are greatly appreciated. All right, now, here is Shelby now. I guess that she, oh, God, she put this video out. Oh, yeah, I did see this. She put up this video basically saying that we shouldn't thank the troops.
The troops.
She's got a different haircut now. I don't know, maybe she's going for a little bit more of an Anglo look, but...
Quit thanking the troops for sacrificing their lives. Let's start saying, hey, government, how about you go fight these wars if you decide?
Well, I don't, maybe she just doesn't fundamentally understand how this shit works, but people join the military and become part of the government. I mean, the government is made of people, and the military, I mean, its only job is to protect and defend the United States Constitution, uphold the Constitution, and protect and defend the national security of the United States of America. I don't know. And if she theoretically won the congressional race, she would also be part of the government. So I don't think she's talking about herself. I just think that she's stupid.
I don't want to thank these men and women who joined the military because they had no other option. Like, they didn't want to go to school. They didn't have the resources.
And she's ignorant, too. Not everybody joins the military because they didn't have any other option. There's plenty of people who join the military because they're proud to serve. Maybe they come from a long family lineage of veterans and those who have joined the armed forces. And going to college is not always the answer. Let me just play that again for you.
No other option. Like, they didn't want to go to school. They didn't have the resources. They don't have the knowledge.
So is she saying that they joined the military because they're too dumb to do anything else? That's kind of what it sounded like to me.
They don't have people that, like, love them, and they go to the military.
They don't have people who love them. Wow. Man, she really is digging herself a hole here.
Military preys on vulnerable populations. Quit thanking the troops for...
Wow. Okay. So you can see why, after publishing that video, people went online and called her a cunt. Now she is, I guess, leaning into that moniker, and she posted a video of her hoochie, and she says, yeah, I'm a cunt. Oh, God, she's gross.
I am a cunt. Great. But would you know a clit if you saw one?
Oh, God, she's so witty. Good God. Can you imagine a Congresswoman? Oh, God. That is awful. That is absolutely awful. All right. Well, I'm going to take you directly from something so disturbing to instead talk about the military in a really positive way. You know, There's been a lot of attention shined on the fact that President Trump is seeking to increase the budget of the military to the largest level that it's been in history, you know. But here is something, a little tidbit that I had no idea had taken place. Let me also tell you that I have heard from plenty of guys who have been in the military and women that the food sucks, that the food is generally not that great. Of course, if you're like in theater, they're going to fly you out lobsters and steaks and all that stuff. They went after Pete Hegseth for that. They do special things, and sometimes the food is awesome, but most often it's really not. And I did a whole series on the substandard quality of food at a number of specific military bases where the base leadership was going cheap on the food for the troops and then actually charging them for more expensive food. And then they were taking the difference and they were essentially pocketing it, taking advantage of people who were not in a position to really do anything about it. Disgusting behavior. So President Trump and Secretary of Health and Human Services, along with Pete Hegseth, they have effectively reduced the cost of feeding soldiers by 50%, not by going cheaper on the food that they purchase for them, but by buying them healthier food, by making more conscious, better decisions about the food that we serve our troops. So rather than feeding them over-processed garbage, we've gone from $18.50 for 3 square meals a day per person to now only $10 per person per day. And they have increased the quality of the food that we're giving to our troops. That is incredible.
Well, we have a program in the military where we're feeding the troops really high quality food on 5 bases. We're going to expand that to all the bases. But the food prior to us getting there, and the guy who's doing it is a famous television chef called Chef Robert Irvine, who used to work for the British Navy. And he's doing the menu now for the military. And the military, Pete Hegseth was worried that this is going to break the bank and cost a lot of money to actually feed the troops what they want. He was going to do it. But the cost that the Pentagon allocated and was being spent prior to Chef Irvine getting there was $18.50 per day per soldier. So that's for 3 meals, $18.50. We are now feeding them for $10 a day. And one of the things that Chef Irvine said from the beginning is we don't need more money. We just need to buy smarter. And, if you buy a frozen salmon fillet, it costs $9. If you buy a fresh one, it costs $6. And if you make good choices, you can eat cheaper and you can stay well and stay healthy.
So really good news. Not only are men and women in uniform going to be putting better quality things in their bodies, better preparing them for the, perhaps inevitable fact that they may end up going out to war. At least their bodies are going to be nourished properly so that as they train, they're going to be in a better position. Zach, she's a Democrat, also known as an anointed one, and believes without a doubt that there's more intelligent than even her closest suffering from existing acquaintances. Prior was about Kamala's nose. Oh, Kamala's nose. Okay. I guess I didn't pay much attention to Kamala's nose. Okay, that's fine. Okay, so good news. Thank you very much, Secretary Kennedy. All right. Now, after J.D. Vance visited Maine this week, the SBA stepped in and started taking a look at loans and payments that were going to Maine businesses. And what Kelly Loeffler and the Small Business Association discovered was that there were about 1,500 businesses and borrowers in Maine that were associated with $93 million in likely fraudulent disbursements of PPP and EIDL loans. Just as they did in California and Minnesota, those individuals have been put on notice. They are also now prohibited from receiving any further support from the Small Business Administration. And so those individuals are also likely going to be forced to get some of that money clawed back, whatever can be clawed back. And hopefully they do pursue criminal charges as well. Surter says, my dad gave me the choice of military or college, which my dad would have paid for. I chose the Marines. Semper Fi, Marine, thank you very much for your service. All right, now, we also have an announcement that the House Oversight Committee has launched an investigation into 4 birth tourism companies that were operating here in the United States. So these 4 companies would bring women in, have them give birth to babies here in the United States. Many of the women were from China and Russia, and it's likely that they were committing visa fraud in order to obtain American citizenship for their babies. Now, this is over and above the previous birth tourism companies that we've already spoken about. Oversight Chairman James Comer and Representative Brandon Gill both fired off letters to the maternity firms that are located in Florida, Texas, and California. They're asking for records about their marketing materials and the number of clients that get serviced, the amount of fees that are collected for these childbirth packages. The benefits of U.S. citizenship are a unique privilege, wrote Comer and Gill, who are chairing the task force on defending constitutional rights and exposing institutional abuses. However, as foreign expectant mothers traveling for this purpose who have come predominantly from China and Russia, there are concerns that the birth tourism industry is giving rise to potential national security and election integrity threats posed by adversarial nations that challenge U.S. interests. While it is not inherently illegal for a foreign traveler to give birth in the United States, willfully misrepresenting one's intentions to enter the country on a temporary visitor visa is in fact a violation of current law, and it's considered visa fraud. So the lawmakers that have called for these records said the websites for each of these companies, we've got one called Have My Baby in Miami, the El Paso, Texas-based International Maternity Services, and Doctors Parati, as well as Dr. Athea Javid's OBGYN clinic in San Diego. Each one seemed to indicate that they're engaged in birth tourism. And all of them are marketing their services explicitly to foreign mothers. They're also providing additional legal consultations and support so that temporary housing can be provided. They also give them step-by-step instructions on how to make trips just for the purpose of giving birth here in the U.S. And the Doctores Parati even directly boasted of engaging in the practice in their social media posts, including using the hashtag birth tourism, hashtag birth tourism. So the demand for records is requiring a response by May 28th, so 13 days from now. You know, this is a huge problem because we got tens of thousands of babies that are born here in the United States to women who are not from the United States every single year. In 2020, there were about 26,000 foreign mothers who gave birth, and that figure went up as high as 70,000 just in 2023. You can see here, Doctoras Parati include a 5-star review from Valeria Daniela Mata. And you know what? Let me see if I can translate this. Nope, that's not going to work. Okay. Save image as. Okay. Let me share this to my phone and I will give you a translation of it. Okay. So there have been a number of investigations just looking into the scale of these birther tourism companies. And it's been estimated that there's as many as 1,000 that are operating right here in the United States right now. And then, out of the United States territory, the Mariana Islands. So if we've got those ones in the Mariana Islands, how many do we have here in the United States of America? Okay. Give me a freaking She thanks them for their guidance, their friendliness, and the sense of safety provided during a maternity experience. Okay. I was hoping she would say something far more legally damning. All right. So the reason that there are so many in the Mariana Islands is because it's very close to China, and this has all surged since Barack Obama came into office. There was a visa waiver program that he put into place back in 2009, which allowed this to start ramping up. Have My Baby in Miami is one of the 4 maternity firms that is being probed. They said on their website that they have conducted over 2,000 births for international mothers. Typically, these mothers come from abroad. They enter the U.S. on a B2 tourist visa or a B1 business visa. And obviously, if you're saying that you're coming here to travel, but you're not really coming here to travel, you're just coming here to squat a kid out, that's a violation. If you say you're coming here to do business, but you're actually coming here to pop a kid out on American soil, that is also a violation. The State Department bars consular officers from providing the visas to non-resident aliens who are believed to be traveling into the country for this primary purpose. So the fact is that they must be lying in order to get those visas. The department considers birth tourism an inappropriate basis for the issuance of a temporary visitor visa for the policy reason discussed above. This is Dr. Athia Javid, the OBGYN in California. President Trump, of course, signed the executive order back in January of 2025 outlawing birthright citizenship, and the legal changes that we've been waiting to take place have still not yet done so. Last month, we had the oral arguments before the Supreme Court. I don't know how that's going to go. It seemed like the justices were a little bit skeptical of the arguments being made by Solicitor John D. Sauer. I thought he did a great job, but just didn't seem like they were fully buying into it. Now, if they do not outlaw, if they do not agree with the president and the administration, and they allow birthright citizenship to explicitly continue, then that means that undoubtedly there's going to be a major uptick in the number of women coming here from other countries. People are still trying to get into the United States, even though we don't have people getting across the border, and we've essentially got net negative migration. There are still thousands upon thousands of people who are attempting to enter at the southern border. It's just that we're doing a better job of stopping it at this point. Untamed Nation, thank you very much for rating the stream. Also, Nancy K. Reese with $50. Thank you so much, Nancy. She says, love your show. Keep up the great work, Zach. You and Lisa are the bomb. I appreciate you, Nancy. That is great. All right. Now, we also, hold on. Reopen last close tab. What did I just close? Yeah. Birth tourism. Okay, how did I get that open twice? All right. Also, I have an update for you on Eric Swalwell's once and former sugar daddy, the billionaire casino mogul, Stephen Klubeck. I was right. I was 100% right when I suggested that his charges for the intimidation of a witness might be related to his scammer wife, who is currently on trial for essentially fleecing gentlemen out of their money so that she could pretend to be their girlfriend and then steal as much as she could from them. That is exactly what this is about. So I guess that there were 3 male witnesses who were planning to testify against his Israeli fiancée, Adva Lavi. And so apparently Mr. Klubeck was trying to stop them from doing so. Prosecutors allege the offense involved force of an express and implied threat of force and violence upon the victim. So that sounds like he basically physically threatened them with harm unless they stopped the process of testifying against his OnlyFans wife. Let's see. So Klubeck, of course, is the same guy who bankrolled Eric Swalwell, and now he's going to have to, of course, bankroll not only his fiancée and her court case, he's going to have to bankrupt his own case. Now, prosecutors filed all 3 of these felony counts of dissuading a witness and 1 misdemeanor count for annoying telephone calls. I didn't know about that one. And the misdemeanor traces back to a call Klubeck allegedly placed to his fiance's attorney, Lou Shapiro. He allegedly cursed at Shapiro and threatened him, threatened his property, threatened his family. Now, a attorney for Stephen Klubek said these charges are false and we look forward to our day in court, as he would say, of course. Klubek's civil attorney is David Hochman and Glazer Weil. His brother, Nathan Hochman, is the Los Angeles County District Attorney whose office filed the charges. That is very interesting. I would imagine that might be a conflict of interest. You might not be able to have that person representing you if the brother of your lawyer is the DA who has filed charges against you. I don't know how they're going to have to do that. All right. Does Swalwell have any normal friends or mistresses? No, he doesn't. No, birds of a feather flock together. That's for sure. All right. Real quick, before we start talking about James Comey, I have a very brief message from our friends on Rumble. Parents and grandparents, you know that America is about to hit a major milestone. We're coming up on our 250th birthday, 250 years of blood, sweat, freedom, sacrifice, the greatest experiment in self-governance the world has ever known, which means that this is the perfect opportunity for you to help your kids and grandkids understand why this country matters. There is a free guide. It's called The Kid's Guide to America's 250th Birthday, and it's honestly a great way to introduce your kids to how this country began. It'll teach them who the founding fathers were, what it was that they risked, why the ideas that they fought for 250 years ago still matter today, perhaps even matter more. This guide is going to send them back to the very moment when they signed the Declaration of Independence. And when they did so, they knew full well that they were putting everything on the line. They were risking life and limb, their business, their family, their freedom, everything that you could possibly risk. It's going to break it all down in a way that the kids are really going to enjoy. It's not going to water it down. It's not going to turn it into boring schoolwork. They will truly enjoy the lessons. So if you care about raising kids who know where this country came from and helping them understand why it's worth preserving, you're going to want to pick this up. And the best part is it is completely free. With this special offer, you're only going to pay $2 for the shipping and handling. So head on over to freeusabirthday.com. That is freeusabirthday.com. And the Kids Guide to America's 250th birthday is there for those kids today. Because America's story matters. Let's make sure the next generation knows it. You can also use the QR code that you see on screen. Thank you very, very much. All right. Now, James Comey is apparently not shutting up anytime soon. And this is not a good look for him. It's not a good idea, but it does go to the heart of his defense, which is that he has done nothing wrong. James Comey continues to contend that he is innocent, while at the same time admitting that he is essentially still running the FBI from the sidelines. He said that he's still in regular contact with FBI personnel. Why are those people still working at the Federal Bureau of Investigation? Who are those agents? What is it that they're talking about? What information are they giving him? How is it that the Federal Bureau of Investigation could have been investigating James Comey, and then some of their very agents would also at the same time be planning squash outings or dinner plans or theater in the park or simply talking about how to take down President Trump from the inside once again, as he attempted to do during his first term. So last night, James Comey appeared on CNN, kind of just casually admitting that he is actively communicating with people still working at the FBI. And, of course, he has recently admitted to the fact that there are people working against the president at the FBI. And he also says that the FBI is under siege. The only thing the FBI is under siege from is the weight of their own criminal activity. The only thing that the FBI has to worry about is whether or not the agents in question have engaged in un-American and unconstitutional and illegal activity. And frankly, those are the people that James Comey would be talking to. The rest of the FBI is more than happy to see the reforms that are taking place there. Let's play the clip here for you.
Do you still talk to employees at the FBI regularly?
I do.
And are they afraid to be talking to you?
Yes, as a matter of fact. They're under siege, and I think about them a lot. I worry about them a lot. both those who are still there and those who've been thrown out while loved ones are sick, while they're struggling financially. There's a lot of pain at the FBI and the FBI community right now, but it's not going to last forever.
Well, I hope it doesn't last forever. I hope it lasts as long as it takes to fire those sad sons of bitches. James Comey presided over the most disastrous run at the FBI. James Comey took a corrupt organization which had a semblance of some morality and constitutionality, and essentially turned it into an intelligence arm for other intelligence arms, and used it to go after his political enemies and to shield his political allies. Now, Hans Mankey writes that on December 20th of 2016, the FBI found out that the supposed super source behind the fake Steele dossier, this guy that they had portrayed as having access to Putin's most innermost secrets, was in actuality a total nobody. Somebody who had interned at the Brookings Institution, somebody who had not really at all been in contact with Vladimir Putin in any meaningful way. And when he was questioned, that supposed source told the FBI that the dossier was just bar talk. There was absolutely nothing to it. But despite this, James Comey proceeded forward as if the Steele dossier was real. James Comey knew full well that the Steele dossier and the so-called intelligence within it was all a load of horsepucky. He also knew that it was funded, it was organized by the Hillary Clinton campaign. He did all of that, knowing that it was bullshit, took it all the way to the FISA court, lied to Congress about it, and he pretended to not know what he was talking about. He also pretended not to know the origins of the Steele dossier. So is the FBI under siege? The criminal element, the deep state evil twin element of the FBI is under siege. He also, of course, briefed President Trump, and then he leaked to the press the fact that he had briefed President Trump. And he laundered all of the lies in the Steele dossier, not only to the public and the mainstream media, but straight into a full-scale investigation. The media operation to take down President Trump still continues to this day. We are still discovering the crimes of the FBI on a daily basis. They're still finding papers and misfiled briefings and investigative reports and evidence sheets. They're in freaking broom closets and secret lockers and all of these different places where they're not supposed to be because they didn't want anybody to ever find them. The lawfare campaign against President Trump can be directly tied back to James Comey and his efforts at his corrupt FBI. James Comey tried to take down a sitting president. James Comey collaborated with criminals inside the FBI. James Comey had absolutely no thought or care for the breaking of his oath to protect and defend the Constitution. And so James Comey, Mr. Boy Scout, sits there and says that he's done nothing wrong. He is not guilty. All he's doing is trying to care for the institution. Now, that may be true. James Comey may believe in the institution of the FBI, but it's certainly not the institution the FBI ought to be. It's the institution, the corrupt organization that James Comey presided over. That is the institution that he seeks to protect. Because if that goes down, if that goes away, then the deep state, the political class, the ivory tower, coastal elites, they'll have nothing to protect them. They'll have nothing to ensure that they can engage in the same types of criminal behavior that they've engaged in all these years. Now, listen to this. This is also interesting. This is James Comey talking about the fact that he's not guilty. I cannot wait to see this guy on trial.
Did you ever think about asking President Biden for a preemptive pardon as Trump was coming back into office?
Never.
Do you think he would have given you one if you'd asked?
I don't know. I wouldn't have accepted it. The Supreme Court said in 1914 that the acceptance of a pardon is an admission of guilt. It's what consoled Gerald Ford when he pardoned Richard Nixon. He carried a quote from the case in his wallet till the day he died because it meant Nixon had admitted guilt. And so I'm not guilty. I am innocent, so I wouldn't be accepting any pardons.
Do you think the people that Biden did preemptively pardon are guilty of crimes?
Well, I'm just telling you what the Supreme Court said. By accepting a pardon, it's an admission of guilt. And so I hope they thought about it carefully.
Did you ever?
It's not exactly what it says. The Supreme Court said that it was an implication of guilt, but when you accept a pardon, the only thing they really said is that you must accept a pardon. And they kind of went through the differences between a pardon and immunity. There is no need to be placed on trial. There is no need to have evidence presented. There is no need to explicitly claim that you are guilty. Only that it's implied that if you accept a pardon, there is guilt somewhere. However, we know that that's absolutely not the case. I mean, President Trump has been forced to give pardons just to stop the process of an overweening and overbearing legal system, a corrupt judicial system, such as what happened to General Flynn. But I do think it's interesting that James Comey seems to imply that all of those other people who did receive preemptive pardons from Joe Biden are likely guilty. I mean, they are. He's not incorrect there. But yeah, I mean, none of them turned down the pardons. That is definitely interesting. So I think that quite honestly, they all believed that there was something they could be charged for criminally. But here James Comey says that he's not guilty, and so he wouldn't have accepted a pardon. I mean, truthfully, what would Joe Biden have given him a pardon for? James Comey wasn't in power. James Comey wasn't running the FBI during Joe Biden's time in office. So there would have been nothing to give him a pardon for. Of course, Joe Biden could have gone back to previous years, could have gone back to that fateful meeting in the Obama White House in December of 2016. Certainly could have given James Comey a pardon for that, but he didn't. So we just have an interesting legal conundrum for James Comey here. But yeah, he is stretching the meaning of that Supreme Court decision. Anyways, I also thought that it was interesting that this morning, Eagle Ed Martin says, no one will ever forget the survivors of political weaponization. The survivors will be made whole and the perps will pay. Now, this is exactly what Ed Martin is working on at the DOJ. And I know a lot of people have, said, oh, hasn't happened yet. When's it going to happen? I don't see it happening. It's great that Ed Martin is saying this. But the thing is that Ed Martin has certain inside baseball that all of those dissatisfied armchair political pundits don't have. And so I tend to trust Ed Martin more than I trust some random person on the internet, of which I am one. I fully admit it. I'm just a dude with a microphone. But I am paying attention to the job that Ed Martin is doing. And I think it's interesting that he said this shortly after James Comey goes on CNN and makes that comment about all of those people being guilty. And of course, James Comey himself is guilty of the weaponization of power. That will be one of the things that he's on trial for. Certainly, the crimes that Comey committed will be coming up in the grand conspiracy. We are still awaiting the findings of the grand jury in Fort Pierce, Florida, related to John Brennan, definitely one of those people guilty of the weaponization of government. Of course, James Comey right there alongside him, along with James Clapper and so many others. Now, also here, I have a case for you about the weaponization of political power. And this is a case that we first mentioned many, many months ago when the indictments were handed down. Now, the case has been adjudicated. Gavin Newsom's former chief of staff has just pled guilty to wire fraud charges related to the case that involves Democrat gubernatorial candidate Xavier Becerra. We mentioned this the other day as well. Now, Gavin Newsom's former chief of staff has pled guilty to 3 felony charges in a public corruption probe that involves Xavier Becerra. Now, Becerra would like to become governor of California, but he's not going to be. And he's not doing particularly well. And he fit right in with the Washington, D.C. political swamp And he was very swampy when he was the California Attorney General. The current California Attorney General, Rob Bonta, also very, very swampy. And he also was not a particularly strong player during the pandemic when he was the Secretary of Health and Human Services. But Dana Williamson has pled guilty to conspiracy to commit bank and wire fraud, false tax returns, and making false statements. Now, we don't have anything on sentencing or anything like that, but I have heard it through the grapevine that Miss Williamson may be speaking to authorities higher than her, and that would be within the Department of Justice, because she is connected to a number of very powerful people. It was last November when she was charged at the federal level, along with other co-conspirators in this 23 counts of obstruction of justice, false statements, bank and wire fraud, etc. Williamson, who left the governor's office in December of 2024, is named along with Greg Campbell, Sean McCluskey, and 2 others on conspiracy to commit wire fraud and bank fraud. Those 23 counts in total include 18 bank and wire fraud charges. Each of those would carry a maximum sentence of 20 years in prison and up to $250,000 in fines. Gavin Newsom immediately pushed himself as far away from Miss Williamson as possible. He put out a statement and said, Miss Williamson no longer serves in this administration. While we are still learning details of the allegations, the governor expects all public servants to uphold the highest standards of integrity. At a time when the president is openly calling for his attorney general to investigate his political enemies, yada, 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 it's important to go ahead and get to the bottom of things. Now, federal prosecutors allege that between February of 22 and September of 24, Williamson and her co-conspirators diverted $225,000 in funds from a dormant political campaign so that they could use it for their own personal use. They funneled the money through a number of different business entities. They disguised it as pay, and the U.S. Attorney's Office said that it basically collectively was used as the funding vehicle for a no-show job. So the indictment alleged that Williamson conspired with a business associate to create false backdated contracts after receiving a civil subpoena in January of 2024 and from the U.S. Attorney's Office regarding the paycheck protection loans made to Williamson's business. What's interesting to me is that she got a subpoena in January of 2024 and kept stealing money right up until September. And then after September is when, she ends up leaving the Newsom administration. She subscribed to false tax returns, claiming more than $1 million in business deductions for what were actually personal and non-deductible expenditures. She took private jet travel, luxury hotel stays, home furnishings, designer handbags, and she did a bunch of deductions for no-show jobs for friends and family. When she was questioned by the FBI in connection with ongoing investigations into the diversion of these campaign funds, the backdated contracts, and allegations of public corruption, she also made false statements to those agents regarding each of those topics. She has not been sentenced yet. She's also the first to plead guilty. These other individuals may now be in a race to speak to the feds and make a deal before Miss Williamson has the opportunity to give some overt testimony about their behavior before they have a chance to do so themselves. And again, Xavier Becerra is connected to this. One of these guys was his aide back in California. He brought him with him to Washington, D.C. It's undeniable that Miss Williamson did this probably for Xavier Becerra, and she also took a bunch of money for herself. So there are other people who can be wrapped up in this and who could end up getting indicted. And if what I'm hearing is true, that Miss Williamson is actively working with the feds right now, that may be exactly what they are seeking to do. And of course, that would be bad news for Xavier Becerra and for anybody else who wants to go up against a government and a justice department that is doing the right thing. So we'll go ahead and wait and see what happens. All right, guys, main event. I said earlier in the show, the idea of CIA diplomacy, it's an oxymoron because the CIA doesn't engage in diplomacy. They're an intelligence organization. They're a clandestine intelligence organization. They're spies. They're spies and mercenaries and killers. They are a very different breed of people. And the CIA has got history with Cuba. We've also got Guantanamo Bay at Cuba. So normally you would expect a meeting like this in Cuba to happen with the Department of State. Marco Rubio would be a perfect person to go down there. The guy is Cuban, after all. He has spoken about the plight of the Cuban people on many different occasions. But instead, President Trump brought Marco Rubio to China wearing the Maduro tracksuit and sent John Ratcliffe and the CIA to go meet with the Cubans instead. Now, Ratcliffe met with the top officials of the Cuban regime to, quote, personally deliver President Trump's message that the United States is prepared to seriously engage on economic and security issues, but only if Cuba makes fundamental changes. Now, this meeting occurring right now is likely due to the fact that Cuba has got no other choice. The country is essentially at its knees. They're not receiving any more fuel shipments from Venezuela. They're not getting the assistance of Russia or China or Iran. The only assistance that I know of that they've gotten has been from Pramila Jayapal, okay, representative in Congress. That woman's a traitor. So we have this first report that came out showing that a U.S. government plane looks very similar to Air Force One, but, you know, it's the CIA's version of it. They're in Havana. Let me just say, how surreal would that be if you're a resident of Cuba and you see a U.S. government plane land on that airstrip? I mean, it looks like Air Force One. I would be thinking it would be Air Force One if I, you know, depending on who got off of it. And to be frank, Ratcliffe could have sent anybody from the CIA, but he sent himself, the director of the CIA. I would imagine that that was done at the behest of President Trump to show that, yeah, we are absolutely serious about this. And I don't know of a time, and I don't know that this has ever happened, anything like this, totally unprecedented. So the fact that it's happening right now, I think that it bodes well for the people of Cuba. So wild, absolutely wild to imagine this happen. All right, so Ratcliffe met with Cuba's Minister of the Interior, the head of the Cuban Intelligence Service, which would be like his counterpart, and Raulito Rodriguez Castro. He is in the government. He's the grandson of former President Raul Castro, according to the CIA official who gave a comment for this article. The CIA official also said that Ratcliffe was there to personally deliver President Trump's message that the United States is prepared to seriously engage on economic and security issues, but only if Cuba makes fundamental changes. The CIA official added that Ratcliffe and the Cuban officials discussed intelligence cooperation, economic stability, and security issues, all against the backdrop that Cuba will no longer be a safe haven for adversaries in the Western Hemisphere. Cuba said it provided information that made it possible to categorically demonstrate that Cuba does not constitute a threat to U.S. national security. That's good. That's big. Cuba also said that there are no legitimate reasons to include it on the list of countries that allegedly sponsor terrorism. And then, a little bit after this visit was announced, the news came out that the United States government was looking to indict Raul Castro, former president, brother of Fidel, grandfather of the man that John Ratcliffe had actually met with at this delegation. So the Justice Department looks to be seeking an indictment against former Cuban President Raul Castro. 3 people familiar with the matter spoke to the Associated Press on this. Looks like President Trump has threatened the possible use of military action against the communist-run island. I think that that is highly unlikely, especially given the visit by John Ratcliffe, one of the people told the AP that the potential indictment is connected to Castro's alleged role in the 1996 shootdown of 4 planes that were operated by the Miami-based exile group Brothers to the Rescue. At that time, Castro was the Minister of Defense. All 3 people spoke on the condition of anonymity because they weren't authorized to discuss an ongoing investigation. The Cuban government did not respond to a request for comment, and any criminal charge against Castro, which would need to be approved by a grand jury, would dramatically escalate tensions with Havana and ramp up expectations of U.S. military action in Cuba, like the one carried out in January. Now, Raul Castro is 94 years old, you guys. He's really not in power in Cuba anymore. So I don't think that it is likely that the United States is going to pull a Maduro on him. I think that this one-on-one meeting was the first step towards a very different type of relationship between the United States and Cuba. Certainly, if Cuba is going to come under our region of responsibility and stop harboring people in our region who are adversaries, then that means that there's going to necessarily be a much closer relationship in terms of the economy, in terms of energy, in terms of, travel and tourism. There would need to be a total overhaul of their infrastructure. Right now, we've also had a lot of statements being made by Marco Rubio. He came out and said that there is $100 million in aid that the United States is prepared to give to the people of Cuba. The only precondition is that it doesn't go to the government. It's got to go to like an NGO distribution network, ostensibly to make sure that the people get it. Of course, nobody really has that high of an opinion of NGOs in the modern age, but certainly whoever it would be that would be doing it, I would imagine that it's going to be like, the newest version of USAID, something like that. Theoretically, it would actually go to the people. But they had mentioned that Cuba actually has, they have a lot of different things that they could be doing to make money. The problem is that money and that power is held in the hands of just a very select small group of people, some Cuban generals that have been in charge and that have really been running the country into the ground. If we did do a Maduro-type raid, then I believe that we would be going in for those people. If things are going to change in Cuba at the government or the ministerial level, a deal would likely include the removal of those types of people, because if there is anybody in the Cuban government that's engaging in drug trafficking or sponsorship of terrorism, it's probably going to be those people that I've mentioned. I can't name any of them, but it's just what Marco Rubio had said. So the criminal charges against Castro would need to be approved by a grand jury, and the possibility of an escalation of tensions might happen. Again, I'm certain that Ratcliffe would have mentioned this to the delegation when he went there. And don't forget, we've got Nicolas Maduro in New York. He is facing drug trafficking charges. There's also a rumor that Nicolas Maduro is also singing like a bird and giving the DOJ and the federal government information on the election fraud network that so many people have talked about over the years. Smartmatic starting as sort of the genesis for the software and then burgeoning off into the hardware as well. The attention that was paid on Cuba initially after the ouster of Maduro kind of shifted for a period of time as we've been dealing with this situation in Iran. But that's basically going to be over very soon, which means that either the United States begins to put overt pressure on Cuba again, or Cuba begins to engage in a series of conversations that brings them into the modern age. If you guys have ever seen pictures and videos of Cuba, they're basically stuck in the 1950s. They can't get any new products. They can't get new electronics. They can't get new cars. It's made them incredibly industrious. You've got people who can fix things that I don't think were ever meant to be fixed. It's pretty crazy. But it's neat when you see cars from the 1950s driving down the road. Of course, nobody can afford gas right now because there's no gas basically in the country, which means that there's also not much power that's flowing around. President Trump declined to discuss this possible indictment earlier today. He said, talk to the Justice Department, but he said they need help, as you know. And you talk about a declining country. They really are a nation or a country in decline. So we're going to see. We have a lot to talk about on Cuba, but maybe not for today. Castro, again, is 94 years old. I just don't see him as being that big of a target for the United States government. If they want to indict him for the taking down of those planes, I'm sure that they would, but I don't think it would be necessary to come get him in a dramatic Maduro-style raid. This event that we're talking about here took place in 1996. It was 2 Cessna aircraft operated by this group, Brothers to the Rescue, and it really kicked the negotiations in the wrong direction. Bill Clinton had been cautiously exploring ways to reduce tensions with Cuba because, you know, ever since the Bay of Pigs and the Cold War, things have not been so good between us. But this didn't help when these planes got shot down. There had been operations that Clinton was engaging in, dropping leaflets over the island, kind of seeking to put the idea of regime change into the minds of the Cuban people. Also, of course, there were Cuban rafters, people leaving the country and then coming here on small boats. That's been happening for a long time. Elian Gonzalez, do you guys remember that? Yes, Cadino, you missed the Tina Peters story. That was the first thing we talked about. Do you guys remember Elian Gonzalez? Elian Gonzalez, Bill Clinton had a SWAT team go into this kid's house and like rip him out of his father's arms out of a closet. And then they sent him back to Cuba. It was totally crazy. I couldn't even believe it at that time. Anyways, they were doing these flyovers of Havana, dropping these leaflets. Cuba had warned the United States government, said, hey, if you keep doing this, we're going to defend our territory. And then we did nothing about it. We just kept flying the planes over. And then on February 26th of 96, there were missiles that were fired from a Russian-made MiG-29 fighter jet that took out these 2 Cessna planes that were just outside of Cuba's airspace. So according to an investigation conducted by the International Civil Aviation Organization, there was a 3rd plane carrying the leader of this organization, and he narrowly escaped. With hindsight, it appears that Castro's move was to slow down the Clinton outreach because they needed the U.S. as an external enemy to justify their national security posture. Isn't that interesting? We're not the only country who did that. This seems like this is something everybody does. All of these deep state bad actors in power inside these all countries around the world, they've all got to have a boogeyman. They've all got to have a bad guy that they have to be constantly at their throat, because then it makes plausible sense why they're going to do the things that they do to their people. They did it here with us, with the Project for a New American Century, and then the Patriot Act, and then, you know, Russia because of Trump, and all of that just keeps going. Anyways, that is what President Trump is fighting to end. Shortly after the shootdown of those Cessnas, Congress passed what became known as the Helms-Burton Act, which codified a U.S. trade embargo, which was enacted in 1962, and it made it a lot more complicated for future U.S. presidents to even engage with Cuba. So, to date, the U.S. has convicted only a single person of conspiracy to commit murder in connection with the shootdown of those Cessnas. Gerardo Hernandez, he was the leader of a Cuban espionage ring dismantled by the FBI in the 90s. He was sentenced to life in prison, but was released by President Barack Obama during a prisoner swap in 2014. He actually went and visited Cuba, tried to normalize relations. This, I also believe, might be one of the reasons why the Central Intelligence Agency visited Cuba. I think it might have something to do with Obama and the network of socialist spies here in the United States inside the deep state, as well as the efforts of NGOs that are clearly being run by globalist organizations and that were previously stealing money from the American taxpayer through the USAID funding racket. Also, Castro has been under investigation by the United States government before. In '93, federal prosecutors in Miami considered charging him and a number of other Cuban military officials with cocaine trafficking. There were testimony from Colombian traffickers that came out during the trial of Manuel Noriega in 2006, but there was never an indictment. Nothing ever happened, and they basically just let it go by the wayside. But I would like to read you this post from my good friend Joe Lang. And Joe hits on the exact same ideas that I just mentioned, but he goes into far more detail. He says, in regards to Ratcliffe visiting Cuba. This is a much bigger story than people realize. Everybody is missing what's really happening. CIA Director John Ratcliffe travels to Havana, Cuba, for a meeting with senior Cuban officials. The message that the U.S. was prepared to expand economic and security engagement with Cuba if Havana makes fundamental changes. Well, of course, they're going to make changes before the United States brings them into the fold, but they're also going to have to give information. Now, remember, in the first passage that I read to you, Cuba specifically mentioned intelligence sharing. Well, what intelligence does Cuba have to share with the United States? It's a small Caribbean island. We've got all the intelligence we need all around Cuba. We've got intelligence that's far more powerful than Cuba all around the world. However, the Cubans may have access to intelligence that is not being shared other places, especially when it's involved in the criminals of the American deep state. That is what I think is happening. Ratcliffe met with Raul Rodriguez Castro. Joe says that Castro is key. The younger Castro is key. Also mentions that the possible indictment of Raul Castro Sr. might be coming up. Do you think this is just about Raul Castro's possible connections to a downed plane in '96? No, Castro had a much bigger connection and nobody is talking about it. Remember what happened in 2014? I just told you there was the prisoner swap. When it comes to normalizing relations in Cuba, it's incredible that we're even talking about it at all. Just 54 years ago marked the beginning of perhaps the most dangerous moment in human history. That was the Bay of Pigs. For 13 terrifying days, humanity teetered on the brink of nuclear war. McGeorge Bundy, my predecessor national security advisor, called the prospect reciprocal mortal peril. Fortunately, cooler heads and vigorous diplomacy averted the immediate crisis. That was the national security advisor that followed the events of the Bay of Pigs. And of course, the Bay of Pigs was a situation where the United States government had attempted to fund Cuban dissidents to go in and overthrow Castro. And when that failed, the CIA wanted us, John Kennedy, to go in and attack Cuba. And Kennedy refused to. There was a standoff. And for 13 days, we were essentially staring down the barrel of nuclear war. But recognizing this reality, President Obama came into office determined to re-examine our Cuba policy. To begin, we relaxed restrictions on remittances and allowed Cuban Americans to travel home to visit their families. We stepped up dialogues with the Cuban American community. Eventually, we reached out cautiously and deliberately to the Cuban government. It took months of closely held negotiations facilitated by the Vatican and by Canada. I'm sure you guys remember this. You want to know why President Trump immediately reversed Obama's Cuban policies when he became president? Obama was having months of closely held negotiations that were facilitated with the Vatican and Canada, a couple of deep staters. Do you think that the timing of the Obama rushing to meet with Carney in Canada very recently, as Trump is negotiating in Cuba, was a coincidence? No, I don't think so. I don't think so. Where could Barack Obama go if he wanted to avoid criminal prosecution here in the United States? Of course, he could claim citizenship in Kenya, but he could also just as easily go to Canada. And, of course, he already had done work with Canada in the past. He could even go to the Vatican if he really wanted to, but I don't think that there's going to be the opportunity for MOHAP in the Vatican. Anyways, the real Raul Castro connection that Trump is interested in is with Obama, not terrorism. On December 17th, 2014, half a century after the white-knuckled nuclear standoff at the Bay of Pigs, Obama and President Castro, Raul Castro, the 94-year-old, announced that the United States and Cuba would begin normalizing relations. It was quite a way to go into the December holidays, and it will be one of the most enduring achievements of the Obama administration. But those enduring achievements did not last long. Obama panicked. If Obama saw that Ratcliffe, the CIA, was going to Cuba, I think that he would recognize the danger of that. Also, because Barack Obama comes from a CIA family, has his history, has his lineage, have all of his ghost identities been covered up? Is it possible that maybe they're on to him and they're going to Cuba to get information, that intelligence sharing? I think that that is a total possibility. Because, of course, John Ratcliffe was meeting with the head of Cuban intelligence. I think that he was there to gather evidence. I think that he was there to begin the process of a new normalization that would go much farther than what Obama did. I think that Obama was more about the destruction of the United States than, of course, our reasonings, which would be the preservation of the United States. In addition to President Obama's meetings with Castro back in 2014, they also met with entrepreneurs and civil society activists. There's not a lot of entrepreneurs in Cuba, except save for some of those wealthy generals that I mentioned, which are running drugs and controlling all of the industry. And society activists, those are going to be the communists that were working previously with one Karen Bass in LA, and also with a number of other communist groups here in the United States. And then at the end of their trip, they watched the Tampa Bay Rays play an exhibition game against the Cuban national team. Those civil society activists, I believe today we would consider them to be NGOs, Antifa, and just overtly members of the deep state. And I go back to the very beginning of President Trump's administration. One of the first things he did was cut off the USAID money flow to NGOs all around the world. And there was still an embargo against Cuba in place by Congress. Obama had directed the Treasury and Commerce to engage in regulatory changes, which included the expanding of grants. Grants, of course, gifted by NGOs, made to foundations to help Cuba develop. Has Cuba developed all that much since 2014 in the last 12 years? No, shit's just gotten worse. That's just been an opportunity to funnel money down there out of the hands of American taxpayers. We know that grants are essentially the theft, the legalized theft from the American taxpayer into the hands of NGOs, foundations, deep state activist organizations, commie organizations. And of course, the Vatican was involved as well in the negotiations of those meetings. And who's got the most corrupt and opaque bank in the entire world? Well, that's the Vatican Bank right here. You guys ever see the episode of Baseless Conspiracies that I did with John about the death of the Vatican banker? Yeah, Cuba developed poverty and misery. The people of Cuba got nothing, but there were quite a few people in Cuba at the head of the snake who got a lot of money. Anyways, I think that John Ratcliffe was there for an intelligence gathering operation, and that this is about a lot more than just helping Cuba to get their oil and make sure that they can turn the lights on. So we'll see how that pans out in the very near future. Let me say thank you very much to, where is this beginning? Sean Joe for the can and the cookie, Space Coast Patriot for the cookie, who says, "Hi, Zach, did you hear the bottom from where, did you hear the boom from where you're at? SpaceX launched and they're landing here." I did not, no. But I'm also like half deaf when my headphones are off. Sean Joe, thank you for 4 cookies. Appreciate that. Let's see. G. Fontez says, "It is implied guilt when a motivated prosecution with endless resources is trying to put a Is it implied guilt when a motivated prosecution with endless resources is trying to put a citizen in prison and defendant accepts a pardon, keeping their life savings from defense attorneys?" No, I would say, in practice, absolutely not. But they didn't address that in the Supreme Court decision. All they said is that the implication exists, the fact that somebody accepts a pardon because they have to accept it. It can't be bestowed upon them without their permission. Obama could try Muslim London, where he just bought a new home after all. London is only 1/3 English at last count. Oh, that's awful. So it's also notable that the crackdown on nonprofits, NGOs, 501c3s continues to this day and is now ramping up in a very specific area, which would be the dark money infrastructure of the left wing here in this country. You've got a dual-pronged investigative and regulatory pincer movement moving to close on the nonprofits and dark money networks that have long anchored the American political left and cultural infrastructure. From Congress to the Justice Department to the IRS, the Trump administration, allied with lawmakers, are examining the anonymity and tax-exempt status that's enjoyed by some of the most influential progressive organizations in the country. The latest development came yesterday while Ratcliffe was in Cuba when the House Oversight Committee issued a subpoena to the 1630 Fund. Now, the 1630 Fund is a massive nonprofit hub that's managed by Arabella Advisors. The subpoena demands internal communications and financial records regarding social media influencer operation program known as the Chorus program. So the core of the House inquiry involves Chorus program's potential role in circumventing federal campaign finance laws. And specifically, the investigation focuses on the payment of social media influencers to disseminate political messaging without the mandated disclosures, which are a factor required by campaign finance laws. So the subpoena is the latest step in the Republican-led effort to map the liberal dark money network that has funneled undisclosed donations into judicial confirmations, environmental activism, nationwide protests, election year turnout operations. The 1630 Fund functions as a 501c4 nonprofit, which allows it to engage in political advocacy while they keep their donors anonymous. However, the Chorus program has drawn specific attention as a potential new frontier in political maneuvering. Last year in Wired, they reported on the existence of this secretive Chorus program. The group allegedly pays online influencers up to $8,000 a month to disseminate talking points which are favorable to the Democrat Party. The influencers are, of course, expected to be tight-lipped about who's paying them, what the arrangements are, what Chorus even actually is. And according to several contracts that were reviewed by Wired at the time, the creators are prohibited from even publicly acknowledging that the program exists, and disclosing the identities of any funders or admitting that they are being paid would be a violation of their contracts. Now, the contracts also reportedly give Chorus the authority to police the content that creators post. That includes the ability to demand creators take down any content that is produced at its events. Some of the most notable online liberal voices are reportedly affiliated with this program. I just want to go on record and say nobody is paying me $8,000 a month to say anything. Olivia Juliana, she's that kind of bigger girl that the Democrats had initially wanted to hire to revamp their image and bring in younger voters. She's a Gen Z activist. She's also the one who fell down the stairs. We laughed about that one. She spoke at the 2024 Democratic National Convention. There's another one named Lauren Pietra. She used to be a Playboy executive, turned into an Occupy Democrats YouTuber. Barrett Adair, he's a content creator who runs a viral American Girl doll-themed meme account. Wow, sounds like a winner. So the Oversight Committee has launched this investigation into the Chorus program. It actually started last November, and they started thinking about the 1630 Fund and how they might be circumventing campaign finance disclosure laws, and that they may be undermining media ethics standards. So this new inquiry is part of a broader push to establish whether or not you've got large-scale nonprofit engines operating within the same legal framework that is required of other political entities, and to see if they're utilizing their tax-exempt status to shield coordinated political campaigns from public scrutiny. You could definitely bet that if there is something they're doing to get around any disclosure requirements, guarantee you they are. Now, this is also particularly notable given the recent actions by the Department of Justice and the Trump administration against the Southern Poverty Law Center. For decades, that is a group that's positioned itself as the preeminent watchdog of hate and extremism. They had that hate map where they said that conservative influencers were engaging in the all-dreaded hate speech. According to federal prosecutors, the SPLC funneled millions of dollars to secretly paid individuals who were joining these extremist groups so that they could then foment the very hate that they were getting money from their donors to stop. So these shell corporations that they would use, would then give people money for jobs that they never actually had. You've got over $790 million in assets that the SPLC has put together over the years. And the Capital Research Center argues that they have deviated from their original mission, and they now use this war chest to stoke division and paint benign conservative groups as some kinds of vectors of hate. So Acting Attorney General Todd Blanche said that the SPLC and other nonprofits similarly in violation of federal laws would be held accountable. I see this latest action against the Arabella group as an attempt to investigate and get those details. So the IRS also is stepping in, not just lawmakers looking to focus on domestic actions, but we need to take a look at foreign-linked nonprofits that also seem to be doing the same type of influence operations here in the United States. One of those places to start is an actual U.S. citizen. That would be Neville Roy Singham. Why stop there? We got to go to George Soros as well. We've previously attempted to do this. House and Senate investigations have documented extensive financial and leadership ties between the groups previously mentioned and Singham. He's a communist, Marxist. He lives in Shanghai, and he's fully affiliated with the Chinese Communist Party. Missouri GOP Representative Jason Smith, who's on the House Ways and Means Committee, has identified over $20 million in donations that were funneled to the People's Forum through shell companies and donor-advised funds. That way they could obscure the original source of the money and they could get around reporting requirements. He personally has urged the IRS to scrutinize the network of Neville Roy Singham. I don't know of any specific actions that have come yet, but I think that that would be something that should necessarily happen. Now, the People's Forum has hosted courses which push communist propaganda, and they support disruptive college campus occupations, and they argue that tax-exempt status is a privilege that should be revoked when used to sow chaos. I would totally agree with that. If you are a nonprofit, you should be operating in the public interest, and instead you're fomenting some type of unrest. The Oversight Committee has escalated their original probe into Singham, and despite the many years of congressional pressure, you've got a sprawling web of activist groups, including the People's Forum, Code Pink, which is run by Neville Roy Singham's wife, the Answer Coalition, the Party for Socialism and Liberation. All of them have tax-exempt status. Why do we have any communist or socialist or Marxist organizations that have tax-exempt status here in the United States? That shit should not be standing. They haven't had any prosecution under Foreign Agents Registration Act. I mean, all these people are operating against the United States on behalf of other individuals who are operating outside of the United States. Republican lawmakers have attempted to press the executive branch for some type of formal evaluation of these groups, but we really haven't gotten that yet. There was a letter that was sent in March to FBI Director Patel, Attorney General Bondi at the time, Senate Judiciary Chairman Chuck Grassley, and Senator Jim Banks, arguing that organizations like Code Pink and the People's Forum are essentially engaging in covert political activities, and they advance the interests of the Chinese government. The lawmakers have urged the DOJ to utilize FARA as a priority tool to combat this foreign influence. The 1630 Fund from Arabella complies with the law and has cooperated with the committee's inquiry while protecting the rights and safety of the people who work with us, they said in a statement for this story. Now, the SPLC, of course, is going to defend their record. They assert that their work remains necessary for monitoring extremism and that the use of informants is necessary. Also, the groups working within Neville Roy Singham's network have also previously denied that they operate under any sort of direct foreign influence. They've also characterized the investigations into them as a political assault intended to criminalize anti-war and pro-Palestinian organizations. So I would really love to see some more overt action coming from the federal government. Going after the NGOs, going after this foreign influence is something that many of us have been championing for such a long time. The longer it goes without these sort of things being addressed, the more it feels like it is never going to be addressed. However, all is not lost yet. We still have plenty of time. We're just waiting to see what shoe drops next. All right, you guys, I do have one more message from our friends over here on Rumble. And for anybody out there who is listening, thank you very much for being here. If you wouldn't mind, please hit that like button. I'm sure you guys hear a lot about crypto, but this is the part that a lot of people miss. Crypto was created so that you could actually own and control your own money. I think a lot of people don't quite understand that. After the 2008 financial crisis, Bitcoin is designed as an alternative to banks. So instead of a bank holding your money, delaying transfers, causing you harm, and limiting your access, charging fees, they are instead not going to have your money. You're going to keep your money. You're going to be in control. And if you've ever had to wait for a transfer to clear, you've probably felt that problem and you know exactly what it's like. So now fast forward to today. Everybody's heard of crypto, but a lot of people are just getting started because it kind of feels complicated. So that's exactly why we've got the Rumble wallet. You've seen that I have the Rumble wallet. It takes all of the complexity out of it. It makes it very simple. You can choose what you want to get into: Bitcoin, dollar-backed stablecoins, even just digital gold backed by real gold. It's not complicated to set up. It connects directly with MoonPay, so you can use your credit card, your debit card, or your bank, and then you'll be up and running in just a few minutes. And then once you're set up, you can even support your favorite creators like myself or others here on Rumble. It's direct, not going to take a 25 or a 50% cut off the top. So you can do this right now. Use the camera on your phone to take a picture of that QR code on screen. That will link you directly to download the Rumble wallet. You can also go to the link that you see right there, wallet.rumble.com. From there, you can set up your wallet. You'll sign in with your Rumble account, tap buy, and you're in the game. And in just a few minutes, you can go from hearing about crypto to actually owning some. So thank you very much to Rumble. Thank you for hanging out. Okay, S2G109 says SCOTUS turned down Virginia's appeal of the redistricting vote that was ruled unconstitutional by the Virginia State Supreme Court. California next, disco Trump. Yeah, I am not surprised by that. Did you get a chance to read any of that paperwork that they filed with the Supreme Court? It was a mess. It was obvious that they were not going to get any remedy from the Supreme Court. Also, principled enigma. When did that boom take place? Your microphone might have picked it up. I have no idea. No idea. But I doubt that it did, because it's a long ways away. Let's see. Okay, that's all we got over there. Let me also say thank you to One Thunder for the can. And we're going to go ahead and call it there, guys. I have to take a leak real bad. And Lisa's home. I got to hang out with her. We got to get some dinner. I am starving. Let me pass out these gold pills. Boom, there you go. I will be live tonight at 10:30 on Badlands for Only Lands. You can join me there. I'm also going to be doing a couple of more shows this weekend. Going to do some video games on Sunday. Maybe might be doing something else tomorrow. We'll see how it works out, but I don't know. Might just have a video that I put out. I had some other stuff I was working on. Thank you for being here. Good luck. God bless. And I will see you guys on the next one. Peace.